Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Dexter Marr, and I'll be your summer session host tonight. Thank you for participating in the closing session of our 51st annual Buddhist Study Center summer session. This is the second anniversary of the Lahaina wildfires, which claimed 102 lives and devastated our lovely Lahaina town and destroyed the Hongwanji Lahaina temple. So let's have a moment of silent reflection and appreciation for the ongoing support and recovery of this tragedy and others like it, and the resilience needed to deal with the loss. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, Namanda, Manda. For those of you that are zooming in for the first time, are here or zooming in for the first time, we welcome Dr. Reverend Enrique Galvan-Alvarez from Manchester, England to Hawaii, as he completes his marathon tour of Hawaii, having made presentations for Kauai, Maui, Hawaii Island, and the Oahu districts, and then this final 5-day sprint to the end here in Honolulu, and of course globally via Zoom. Born in the Spanish Canary Islands, he's a longtime resident of the United Kingdom, where he earned his PhD in modern languages in 2011 and is now a professor at Universidad Internacional de La Rioja. He encountered Tibetan Buddhism in 2003 and then discovered Reverend Dr. Alfred Bloom's writings in 2011 and subsequently began a 5-year-long correspondence with our dear Dr. Al that has led to Kyoshi ordination as a Shin Buddhist priest in January 2025. He's a leader in the European Shin Buddhism movement and a mentor to 4 current Tokudo aspirants from Spain, Germany, and Belgium who will seek ordination in October. Housekeeping, a few reminders. For those attending in person, our restroom facilities are right through this door. Refreshments are available throughout the evening, so please feel free to help yourself. Thanks to those that are bringing additional goodies. Our table is groaning under the weight of all the good stuff. Please remember to use the microphone when speaking so that our Zoom audience can also hear. And for our final night, we have a mini Hongwanji bookstore back there at the back with our bookstore director. We have a number of the books that Enrique has mentioned this week. And so please use this as an opportunity to take the Dharma home with you. Okay. For those viewing remotely, please turn your audio off and use the chat to make comments or ask questions. So tonight's topic focuses in on Professor Enrique's academic research on Jodo Shinshu ritual. And then after the 7 p.m. break, BSC Director Reverend Blaine Higa will officiate the closing service, and Reverend Enrique will offer a Dharma reflection. Okay, so please enjoy the presentation. See you later.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you again. So we already have a question in the chat, but this pertains more to the Dharma side of things. Last night, someone asked if you have to die in order to go to the Pure Land. Please review your answer to her question. Well, the answer is recorded. I think, and I think my presentation towards the end, my Dharma reflection will tangentially address that. I spoke about the Pure Land not as a place that one goes, but as a boundary, right? And it's the boundary of my samsaric existence, the boundary of my self-centeredness. And so it only is with physical death that we reach that boundary. But I wouldn't say you die and then go to the Pure Land. At death itself, birth in the Pure Land happens because it's that boundary of transformation. I'll sum it up that way, right? It's a huge subject, and I will tangentially address it later on. Hopefully that's okay. So today, you see I'm looking a little different. I'm not here in my capacity as a Shin Buddhist minister, not for the first hour anyway. I'm wearing a different hat. So today I'm going to talk to you as a scholar, as a researcher. Because part of the reason why I got invited to come here was to discuss my research. And so I just wanted to give you a very brief overview of the research I have conducted over the last 7 years on Jodo Shinshu ritual, and to invite your thoughts. By the way, this is not fieldwork, so I'm not gathering data from you. The book is pretty much finished. It's not published yet, but it is very much finished. So if we could share the PowerPoint. And as it has been mentioned already, after the break we'll have the service, and then I'll offer a Dharma reflection. And of course, I always invite questions and interjections of any kind, but today perhaps, because I'm speaking more like a scholar, I just want to share with you something. But if there are any questions or anything that captures your attention, always feel free to speak. But it will be a very different tone. So, we come to the end of our journey. We have been talking about various aspects, various paths, journeys, relationships, encounters. And so when we talk about ritual, it also fits into this pattern in a way, but I will be approaching it personally very differently. So ritual, we could see it as a way of performing, enacting these relationships among people who share the Dharma, our relationship with the Dharma itself, with the three jewels, and so on. So, today, as I've said, today's talk is going to be a little different, and this is a project I've been working on for the last 7 years. In fact, it began, I was starting to work on it when I met Reverend Higa in Berkeley. So my trip to Berkeley, the purpose of that was to start conducting field work in different Jodo Shinshu temples in California and looking at how ritual had changed over the course of the recent past. So I conducted field work in California, in other parts of the US Southwest, but primarily California, primarily the Bay Area. And then I also traveled to Argentina and to Brazil, and I will mention a little bit about my experiences in South America. Now, this book project is a co-authored volume, and we've worked together, Reverend Dr. Luella Matsunaga, who got ordained with me in 2019, and she's a retired lecturer from Oxford Brookes University in the UK, and Reverend Professor Dake Mitsuya from Ryudai, from Ryukoku Daigaku, who you all probably know or you have heard of. So the three of us have been working together in this project. And one thing we've realized is that Jodo Shinshu is very widespread. It's present in a lot of different countries, and it's very hard to come up with a comprehensive account of how ritual has been changing. Because we took a time span of Meiji, the beginning of the Meiji era, all the way to the very present, all the way to now. And that's roughly 150 years. And we had to focus on certain locations. So we decided to focus on Japan, the changes that have happened in Japan. We decided to focus on North America, particularly California, South America, Brazil and Argentina, and then Europe. And by the way, I didn't do most of the European bit, that was Luella. I felt too close to it. But she had been carrying fieldwork and research into European Jodo Shinshu for the last 20, 30 years, right? So she has seen a lot and a lot of changes as well. So hopefully some of what we have found out will be interesting to you. And of course, we always welcome your thoughts, though they won't make it to the book, but there will be future articles, and I hope to come back to Hawaii anyway, and maybe conduct fieldwork here. So one notable absence there is Hawaii, in terms of places, as you can tell. But it was a bit far from either of us, or Dake-sensei, to come and really conduct extensive fieldwork. However, I would love to write about Hawaii in the future, because I think Hawaii is the first stepping stone of Jodo Shinshu, or at least Jodo Shinshu Hongwanji moving eastwards. Right? I mean, there were Jodo Shinshu communities in China in the early 1900s, but Hawaii was before that. So Hawaii is probably the first instance where Jodo Shinshu leaves Japan and becomes established elsewhere. So it's a very interesting example. And Hawaii has the longest history of Jodo Shinshu being practiced and lived for outside Japan. So we definitely would love to work on Hawaii at some point. And my trip to Hawaii has confirmed that in many ways. But anyway, I won't be talking much about Hawaii. However, it is mentioned in a few places, not in terms of fieldwork, but in terms of historical research, because of course, Hawaii is a key place in this development. And so, one thing we encountered by talking to Jodo Shinshu ministers and scholars is this view that many people, especially doctrinal scholars, would say, in Jodo Shinshu, ritual doesn't matter. Ritual is not important, right? So you hear this view many times. However, we believe that it's a very important part in the life of our communities. It is something that brings people together. It is something that elicits strong emotions and opinions as well. And so it's something quite important, even though at the level of official discourse, you could say, oh, well, it's all about Shinjin, or it's all about the Nembutsu. Yeah, ritual doesn't really matter. Ritual doesn't really do anything, right? We don't practice rituals for any specific purpose. It's just an expression of gratitude. And yet, ritual weighs a lot. And so I wanted to start by quoting from this book that has been recently translated, the Hoshiki Kihan, The Rituals and Liturgy, The Standards of Jodo Shinshu Hongwanji. I think Kusunoki Sensei from Seattle translated it, was one of the translators. And so this is the preface. So this is how it begins, right? And this is the Governor General of Hongwanji, Reverend Ogino Shoyu. The person's manner and etiquette reflect what is in one's heart, and the ceremonies and rituals for religious services that one conducts are representative of a person's beliefs, devotional reverence, and cultural tradition. Accordingly, it is often said that the manner and finesse with which they are performed is likened to a barometer indicating the prosperity or decline of the religious organization. Interesting, right? So on one hand, you have people saying, oh, rituals don't really matter. That's not the essence of Jodo Shinshu. But then you also have this view, right? And I think this is a very interesting point. And here I'm speaking as a scholar, so I'm not expressing my opinion particularly. I think there's something quite universal about this idea that our actions reflect our heart, and the way we present ourselves represents something about how we feel, how we think. But there's also something very culturally, specifically Japanese, about appearance, performance, manners, finesse, right? When it comes particularly to ritualized performance. Of course, every culture has rituals. Every culture performs relations through ritual. In some cultures, you shake hands when you meet somebody. That is a ritualized behavior, right? You might do certain gestures. You might nod at people. So all of that is ritualized behavior. Now, you could say in Japanese culture, the proper execution of social ritual is very important, right? Perhaps more important than in other cultures, but every single culture has that aspect. And so it's very interesting when we were engaging with diaspora Japanese communities, Nikkei, Japanese descendants in North America, in Brazil, in Hawaii, right? Because there is a Japanese sensitivity, of course. There is a Japanese way of engaging with each other, and there's also other layers, of the local layers that are also there. And so sometimes, like you learn how to navigate certain social interactions, certain social rituals in Japan, and then I go to California and it's like, oh, I can operate that way. Oh, no, not really. And then sometimes it is, and then sometimes it's not, right? So, bringing it to Jodo Shinshu, it is not uncommon to hear that in Jodo Shinshu there's no self-conscious, deliberate practice, that the life of Shinjin is simply a life of gratitude. And that makes it sound all very natural, very spontaneous, right? And that, I'm not saying that's not true, but ask Dexter, who's currently training for Tokudo, right? So that way of presenting things conceals how much the people training towards ordination has to work in a very careful, meticulous way and is expected to perform ritual in a very specific, mindful, attentive way, right? And maybe to a lot of lay people, this remains kind of hidden, or this is not evident, but those who have gone through the ordination training, it's very ingrained in you, in a way. The way you fold your robes, the way you're supposed to walk, the way you're supposed to sit or stand, even the way you're supposed to give a Dharma talk. How much should your hands move? Mine are probably moving too much, but this is not a Dharma talk. But they do move a lot when I give Dharma talks as well, right? And there's a lot of details like that. So there's a lot of mindfulness, there's a lot of conscious attention, and I'm not using this in a technical way. I will use mindfulness in a technical sense later, in a Buddhist technical sense, but more in the kind of common English use of the term. You have to pay a lot of attention, right? You become very aware of your body, of your voice, and of how you move, how you talk, how you do all these things, how you chant. So, and there are tests where you're expected to perform these rituals in a very specific way. Oh, Raymond is here as well. You can also ask Raymond. They are both training. So, during my time training for Tokudo and for Kyoshi, I heard many times about the importance of ritual. And this is the interesting thing in our tradition or in our institution. If you talk to doctrinal scholars, many of them will tell you ritual is not that important. Now, if you talk to the Gonshiki people, to the experts in ritual, and Reverend Higa and I have a friend who's fully trained, and he's a wonderful teacher of Gonshiki, and they will give you a different view. They will tell you that it really matters. It's really important, right? So I'll tell you a story about when we were doing Tokudo. And we were doing the Shoshinge, which is the main thing you have to do during Tokudo. And one of the instructors asked us, do you entrust in Amida Buddha? And yeah, the audience, I mean, us behaved like you did just now. You all were like, okay. Where is this going, right? Except one person who was having it translated and went like, yes. Yeah. So the translation into his language, I'm not going to mention which language it was, but it was in English. The translation was like, oh, okay, sure, that's why I'm here, right? But, it obviously was a question that didn't expect an answer. And then after our silence, what he said is like, I don't think so. Because the way you are performing the ritual doesn't show what's in your heart, doesn't show that heart of entrusting, that heart of reverence. And then he went on to say, when I see a beautiful ritual, I feel like I entrust in the Buddha. I feel this sense of entrusting. And when I see a ritual poorly performed, I think, there's no Buddha, there's nothing. This is not real, right? It's a very interesting view. When you talk to people who are very ingrained in that world, they can speak in this way. And I think there's something quite interesting about that. I'd be very happy to experience or explore with you if you have thoughts or questions to contribute. Now, voice also is very important. And so a lot of the skills that you are taught are musical skills. You learn to sing, basically, and you learn how to use your voice, how to project it, how to hold your breath, and all of this require immense bodily attention to do it properly. And so I'll tell you a funny story. I come from a musical family. I have an aunt who, she won't understand, she doesn't speak English, so it's okay, I can talk about her. She might watch this, but yeah, I don't know, they might have subtitles. She's a musicologist, right? And there's a few of her sisters, my aunts, they have musical careers, conservatory careers, conservatoire. Yeah, piano, singing, composition, I'm not sure. Anyway, in the classical Western tradition. And so when I started training towards Tokudo, I realized I could sing. I thought I was really bad at it, right? They tried to teach me when I was a kid, and I always failed. And I carried that sense, I can't do this, really. But then I had a really good chanting teacher who was Ananha Tanaka sensei, who lived in California for a couple of years. And I had the very good fortune to learn from him. And he was such a patient teacher because I was getting it wrong again and again. And he sat with me very patiently, try again, try again. And I remember his face the first time I hit the right note. He's like, see, you can sing. So he believed in me, and that's why I could do it. And so when I was training towards Tokudo and I had a bit more confidence, I wanted to show my aunt what I could do, right? And I did show her, and she was quite impressed. She said, like, okay, you're a baritone. Yeah, you can hold your breath really well. Yeah, you're kind of precise, blah, blah, blah. I would prefer it if you did opera, but okay, finally, somehow, somehow you made it. Somehow you are in the family now, right? So there's all of these details that I think are very significant. And so here's a provocative reflection as well, that I was in two minds about whether to talk about meditation today, which I know is a big subject in Jodo Shinshu in Hawaii and in the US, and in South America, indeed, not so much in Europe. But a lot of what we talk about in the book is ideas about what meditation might be or what meditation might mean in a Jodo Shinshu context. Right? So you would hear the view that there's no meditation in Jodo Shinshu. But a lot of these conversations hinge on what do we mean by meditation? What do we mean by mindfulness? And how these words are associated with words in the canon, in the Chinese canon primarily, but also in the Japanese language, and how they're being translated. And so my question is like, is this all of this Tokudo training, is this mindfulness? Because it sounds like there's a lot of careful attention, right? And you could say, well, it's not to become awakened, it's not to become a Buddha. Sure, it's to perform a ritual, but you are doing a practice that involves a huge amount of conscious attention. And meditation, I have an academic article, it's about something else, but I devoted like a section of it to provocatively say there's no such thing as meditation in Buddhism. So anyway, meditation is a Latin word, it's a word of Christian origin, and so, you know, we could talk about this for hours, really, because it's about the definition of the terms. But my point is that if you imagine meditation as being sitting quietly, that is one of the many practices in the Buddhist tradition, many among others that are categorized together with things like bowing, chanting the sutras, offering incense, doing mindfulness of Buddha, chanting various things, and they're not necessarily considered as separate practice. It's like, oh, here's meditation, and here's this other stuff. That's a very modern, problematic, in my view, distinction. So, it's interesting, for example, in Jodo Shinshu, a term that appears very often is this josan, meditative and non-meditative, right? And this refers primarily, jo is the same kanji as sadameru, right? So it's something focused, something decided, right? So this is a translation of samadhi. Samadhi in Sanskrit means integration, focus, bringing something together. Now, samadhi might not necessarily take the form of sitting quietly in silence. There are many types of samadhi that are described in the Buddhist tradition. And the sun, the non-meditative, is commonly associated with precepts. And so the way I translate it freely into English is like on and off the cushion, right? So you might be practicing in a focused way, sitting down, whatever that practice is, but you also carry that practice into your daily life, right? That's just how it's described in some traditions in the West, right? So it's kind of on and off the cushion. So this idea of Josan. And so in Jodo Shinshu, we normally say, we don't engage in these meditative or non-meditative practices, right? We don't do Josan. And yet, we call the Nembutsu and the non-retrogression Shoujo, the right samadhi, right? The right focus. So this is very interesting, right? But it's translated differently, and the translation obscures that connection in the original language. So this right is something called right establishment, Shoujo, right? So for example, Honga Myogo Shoujo Go, a line from the Shoshinge. The name of the Hongan, of the original vow, is the action of the right samadhi. Okay? And Nembutsu itself contains two characters, right? Butsu, as you know, is Buddha. Nen could be translated as mindfulness or thinking, right? So our central practice, our central act that we have been talking about for this week is literally translated as mindfulness of Buddha. And so you could say there's no meditation in Jodo Shinshu, you could say there's no meditation in Buddhism at all. I think you cannot argue that there's no mindfulness in Buddhism. You could say there's no meditation. However, you could also say, like Arai Sensei argued, it was published in 2019, but this is a talk he gave in Berkeley in 2015, I was there, that Nembutsu is the ultimate form of meditation. And he is making that point by looking at the language and looking at how a lot of these conversations hinge on how we translate words and what do we mean by them. He's not saying we do the Nembutsu as a meditation in the way most people imagine meditation to be, but he's saying what the Nembutsu is, performed, listened to, lived in the way we normally do in Jodo Shinshu, could be considered a form of meditation. Now, not one that I do. So anyway, I think these are all interesting things to consider. And I encourage you to read this paper by Sensei. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, if you're interested, if you want me to talk more about this subject, or... Yeah, go for it.
No direct connection, Jodo Shinshu and meditation, how you described it. I don't think it's a reason for Jodo Shinshu people to not do meditation. I'll define it as belly breathing or mindful breathing, because it's documented that it's very healthy physically, mentally, etc., as well as helping one to be more in control for people who don't have control over their emotions, like anger and greed and that kind of stuff. So that's my comment.
That's a very common argument that we have encountered, yes. And I'm not arguing for or against, I'm just describing, right? So yes, I think that view is fairly accepted as being doctrinally sound, but then is that really meditation in a Buddhist sense, right? Or is that just a health practice you do? Like, I mean, I do a lot of walking, some people do Tai Chi, some people might do go to the gym, some people might do swimming. Okay, fine, and you do some belly breathing. I do belly breathing when I chant. I need to do it properly. Right? So maybe what I'm hinting, and then I'm interjecting as a kind of minister. The minister's coming out, sorry. can keep him under control. Perhaps, it's just, I'm going to throw out this thought. Perhaps the Jodo Shinshu tradition has everything. It's a complete tradition. We don't have to import all the things. Perhaps everything is there, but we just call it something else? Just a thought. Terry.
Frequently, I think that a lot of the rituals keep our religion separate and not as inclusive, and makes it harder for people to accept it
Right.
and be part of it. And so it's like, can we do without it? You know, I mean, it's so ritualized, it's so performative, it's so precise, it's so practiced, you know, instead of being more natural and more inclusive and more. Anyway, so that's one part of it. And I mostly feel that way.
Okay.
And it's interesting to hear how hard these aspirants have to work to learn this. And yet there are other times when I hear a certain minister do the chanting and everything, and it's so melodic, and it just takes you on a journey, and it's so beautiful to hear. There are some ministers who have just beautiful voices, and it's wonderful to hear, but overall, like, I kind of feel like it's a barrier. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to comment much on it. I think it's just something I would write down, and because there is a paradox in there, right? When you're expressing on one hand, you appreciate it, it moves you, but at the same time, you feel it also creates a barrier. And maybe it's meant to do both. I don't know. Mm. Mm.
And it's not of Hawaii, you know.
Right.
It's a borrowed ritual.
Mm. Okay. Thank you.
So I want to respond with my own experience to Terry's comment. So I'm a relatively recent convert, and I grew up here, but I knew nothing about Hongwanji. And growing up, you know, I just thought, I was so unfamiliar that it was something to be avoided. And then when I was introduced, I thought that the ritual parts of it, like Terry expressed, was off-putting. So going to the temple was just, you know, it just was meaningless to me, and in fact was just seemed awkward, right? And then I took a course with Ray, and it was a lay training, and Bishop Umintani, you know, covered some of the ritual aspects, right? And what I saw for the first time by going through it and being exposed to the history and the purpose, it generated this sense of belonging and appreciation, which I had never felt before. And I regret that for a variety of reasons, I, you know, didn't proceed further with the training, but I never have forgotten that. So when you folks do service now, my reaction to it is totally different. Like, I have so much respect and admiration for it. So I do think I totally understand what Terry's saying about in some ways it can be, you know, separate others and perhaps you know, bar those from coming to and understanding. But if they can reach that border, it's powerful. So that's my comment. Thank you.
I think there's something about ritual where I'm going to interject a bit. I love ritual, but and it resonates with me. But I also come from a culture that adores ritual, that is heavily ritualized in a different way. And I think a lot of it is how you grow up, whether you understand what's going on as well. I think that for a lot of people, that's a big point, whether they understand the reasons why it's done the way it's done. And how are they thinking about it? Are they thinking about it as an aesthetic experience? Something that can inspire them, that conveys a certain feeling? If they are thinking of something that they want to join in, but they can't. Some people like not to join in. Some people like to witness. In Japan, it's very rare that lay people join in the ritual, right? Even though they can, no problem, right? So there's a lot of layers to this, but I think there's something about ritual that is very bodily, that is a way of switching off the conscious mind in a way and working with the body in a much more intuitive way. And yeah, there's something meditative about it. And maybe provocative, even though there's no meditation in Buddhism, of course. Don't know if there's any. But anyway, that's just an opinion. I think people, as I said, ritual is something that elicits strong feelings in people, right? And this is something. I'll continue, so I can cover a few things. I think maybe you have said some things about what ritual means to you, how do you react to it. But if you can throw a word, just one word, you know. Formal, okay? What else? Too many at the same time. What's that? Confident? Yeah, what was the other thing? Restrictive, you said. Disciplined, huh? Respect, okay, good. Praising, okay, yep. That none of you have said the words I wanted you to say, but that's okay. This happens often with my college students. It's like, okay, I'm trying to think like you would think. Like, no, but all of those are good answers because, I mean, there's no bad answer. It's what it means to you. And I think in one word, you've expressed something. Now, I'm going to focus on these three qualities that perhaps in some way relate to some of the things you've said. One, static. I think a lot of people have this idea that ritual is always the same, is unchanging, is traditional, right? And it's done in a certain way and it doesn't change. Also, there's this assumption that it's ancient. Because it's unchanging, it's been going on for a long time in a certain way. And also, I think this relates to the formality, to the respect, right? So it's kind of one-directional. It carries authority, therefore creates a separation, as you were saying, carries gravity, right? It must come somehow from above. It's a top-down thing, right? Now, what our research has shown is that all of these things are very, very fluid and not necessarily like this, right? So I'm going to give you a few examples. And I find it so interesting that in the same introduction to the book I talked about, The Rituals and Liturgy of Hongwanji, recently translated into English, like a few lines after what I just read you, rituals are an indication of the health, you know, like the state of an institution, of how much respect there is, of it's an expression of one's heartfelt beliefs and so on. It says this: the 800-year history of Jodo Shinshu Hongwanji, in a manner of speaking, is none other than one filled with many changes in its rituals and ceremonies. And this is very true. When you start looking from Kakunyo onwards, people project a lot and think like, oh, surely, oh yeah, the words have been the same. Now the tunes have changed throughout the centuries, and even the formats have changed a lot. So we tend to imagine, oh, people were doing this ritual in this way 800 years ago. Not really. Not really. There were elements, of course, and every change is based on something that was there before. But it's constantly changing, constantly evolving. And I find this so interesting because this is an official book to say, here are our rituals and liturgies, here's our traditions. It's somehow final, right? And yet he's acknowledging very honestly, it's a history of a lot of changes. So it will carry on changing, we assume, right? And one thing that we encountered, at least in Japan, in terms of fieldwork, a phrase that was repeated is this: jidai ni awaseru. Jidai ni awaseru, so like meeting the times, adjusting to the times. And a lot of people were talking about this. And so there is an adjustment to the times, to the times we live in, but also an adjustment to place. And in Hawaii, for the first time, I've heard the Jusei Ge being chanted in English. And perhaps today we will hear it chanted in English, right? Or the Shoshin Ge being chanted in English, right? There's something quite interesting about that. And I believe it's perhaps because Hawaii is the place where Jodo Shinshu has been established for longest. And so that's an example of adjusting to the times and to the place. And some people say, I don't understand. Why are we chanting in this language? I mean, most Japanese people don't understand Kambun, don't understand ancient Chinese, the language of the sutras, right? And there are now modern Japanese versions of all the sutras. So you can hear the Shoshin Ge and the Sambutsu Ge chanted, sung in modern Japanese. Now Japanese people understand when they sing it, right? Now it makes sense. That's easier to do than in English in some ways. But yeah. So there's a lot of change. There's new ritual forms emerging more frequently than imagining. And you said it's a borrowed tradition. So you say, oh, maybe Hawaii innovates because Hawaii is far from Japan. Japan innovates all the time. There are new formats coming out of Japan very, very frequently. And I'm going to give you an example. So in 2023, I went to the Kyosan Hoyo, the 800th anniversary of the establishment of the teaching and the 850th anniversary of Shinran Shonin's birth. So I went with a few members from Europe. And we got up in the morning. So these are people that I had been teaching the Shoshin Ge, how to chant the Shoshin Ge, Sofu and Gyofu, mostly during COVID. And so mostly online, but also in person. So these are people who like to chant, who had musical talent, right? They were practicing the Shoshin Ge for a few years. So it's like, okay, now let's go to Honzan, let's go to Nishi Hongwanji, 6 a.m. in the morning, and do it in a group. You'll see it's a wonderful experience, right? And you get to practice what you've learned. And so we get up in the morning, very hard for me. We get there, and the service begins, and the tune is the Shoshin Ge, but the tune is completely different. And they all look at me, of course. And they go like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know. So do you know this tune? It's like, no, I do not. I've never heard it in my life. I said, what do we do? It's like, follow along. Get a sense of how it goes. It's repetitive. Ritual is repetitive. And see if you can join in. So this was what they call Shoshin Ge Wasan, which is not to do with the Wasan, right? But it was a tune created specifically for this occasion. And it so happened that that day we went there, that's what they sung. So, this happened in 2023. So yeah, the words are the same. The characters are the same. They have been since Shinran Shonin wrote it. But the range of tunes has been huge, and it continues to develop. So especially in Europe, I've encountered this idea that, especially the Shoshin Ge, things like, Shoshin Ge has this feeling so solemn, right? So beautiful, sounds so foreign. In Europe, they like that. It's like, oh, it's so Japanese. Oh, this is from the time of Renyo Shonin, right? Surely they chanted it like that. Not really. Now, when people in Europe hear Ondoku-san, they think, that's too modern. They don't like that. Oh, that sounds a bit Christian. They don't like that, right? So, now, you might think, so people think the tune of the Shoshin Ge is older than the tune of Ondoku-san. Now, what I'm going to show you is the other way around. And the Ondoku-san is very interesting because it involves Hawaii. So, let's talk about the Shoshin Ge first. So there was a huge movement at changing the tunes that the texts are chanted to or sung to in the Meiji period. It started in 1887. But that's not the form we are still doing now. That was the beginning of a long process that then became, so they tried to import Tendai Shomyo into Jodo Shinshu again. So there was a tradition of Shinshu Shomyo that Higashi Honganji, Otaniha, they're still in that tradition, let's say. But in our Honganji, Nishi Hongwanji, they tried to, let's not do this. Let's bring back something traditional, something old, Tendai Shomyo, this beautiful feeling. So they send people to Ohara, Nishi Hongwanji priests, to learn from Tendai priests in Ohara how to sing. But then they realized it was very complicated. And so from the 1930s onwards, they started simplifying. So yeah, the melodies are based on something very, very old, older than Jodo Shinshu, older than Shinran Shonin in a sense, except Tendai Shomyo has also been changing, of course. But then they simplified it. And the final format that we use now, I don't know exactly when it's from, but it's definitely more recent than Ondokusan. Now, the first melody of Ondokusan, I mean, of course, Ondokusan is a wasan that Shinran Shonin wrote. It's part of the Shozomatsu wasan. And it has been chanted in the way the other wasan were chanted for many centuries. However, it became popular in the 1900s. And it was here in Hawaii in 1918 that one of the tunes of the Ondokusan, these days less favored than the other, that was composed here in 1918, right? And so, to Bukkyo Ongaku, so this new style of Buddhist music that became very popular in Japan, but that it also was very popular outside Japan. And this song became so popular in Japan that in where? I don't have the, no. Shimazu? Yeah, in 1952, Shimizu Osamu, who was an Otaniha minister in Osaka, composed a new tune that perhaps you're more familiar with. No, I'm doing the first one. Can you help me? You probably know it. Dai no ondoku wa. Right. So, this is an example of how Hawaii gave something to Japan. So you say it's a foreign tradition. Yes, but it's flowing in both directions, which is quite interesting, right? And then this became so prevalent all over the Jodo Shinshu world. You hear it in Brazil. You hear it in the BCA, in the continental US. You hear it in Japan a lot. So, ritual travels in many ways. Now, in Europe, we don't like it. So we don't, we mostly don't do it. But the Shoshinge, yes, very nice. This is like Renyo Shonin's time, yes. So this is the thing about one direction. Is it from the top down? Is it Japan to the diaspora? Not always, right? And here is a building that I believe all of you are familiar with. Some of you work in it. Hawaii Betsuin. I've taken a lot of pictures of it. And to the left you have Tsukiji Honganji, right? That some of you will also know. Do you know which one was first? The Betsuin. Yeah. Again, Hawaii gave to Japan this. So whose tradition is it? It's bouncing back and forth, right? So this is very interesting. So Hawaii Betsuin was built in this form, and that was not the establishment of the Betsuin itself, but the building was built in 1918. Tsukiji Honganji, very deliberately copying Hawaii Betsuin, was built in 1934. And this is a very interesting style, which in Japan was called Indo-Saracen, right? So Indo-Saracen, so it had elements of the Middle East, India, and it tried to be a kind of pan-Buddhist style. So why do we need to build Japanese temples? Let's create an identity that resonates with all Buddhists, right? That goes back to the origins of Buddhism, to India. And the gathas and things like Ondokusan are part of that project as well. In fact, the first Buddhist hymns were not composed in Hawaii. They were composed in colonial Burma and in other parts of Asia, where people were trying to create this Buddhist identity very much mirroring Christianity. Because it was part of the anti-colonial movement of saying, Buddhists were being were under pressure from the colonial powers or by people under the auspices of the colonial powers to become Christians. And they're saying like, oh, but you Buddhists you don't even have a God, right? This kind of rhetoric. You don't even have a holy book. And it's like, oh yeah. So they produce a Buddhist Bible. And they produce we have hymns. We got everything like you do, right? We have proper religion. Right? So a lot of these things emerge even before they emerge in Japan or in Hawaii. They emerge in other parts of Asia, and they travel around, right? So the organ, the chairs, the tile floors, many of these things that you find now in Japan came from Hawaii, came from the Americas. So there is this two-way journey, which I think is so interesting. And this is just one example. There are many others. So it's not like, oh, yes, true, we go to Japan, we get trained, we get taught how to do it, but then, people come to Hawaii. If you did, Reverend Higa, if you did ritual at your temple in exactly the way you were taught, how would your members react? No, well, it wouldn't work, right? And you'd be surprised to know, or maybe not, that in local temples in Japan it's the same. You go to local temples and things are done slightly differently. Because sure, local temples are mostly inherited from father to son, right? And so the son goes, trains, learns all the proper ways, gets back to the family home. It's like, okay, now you do it like I did it, like my grandfather did it, right? So, ritual is very fluid. It's very fluid, and it's constantly changing. And so finally, to conclude with this, because we almost at break time, but I want to hear some thoughts from you as well. I just wanted to tell you another interesting example connected to the issue of meditation, people wanting a practice and all these things. So there's two things where I did field work, and they were very interesting. By the way, I don't do any of this. I'll explain my own personal take on ritual as a minister. But I took part in what you could call an Nembutsu retreat, which was an attempt to do something, a very ancient practice in the history of Buddhism in Japan, which is the Hyakumanben Nembutsu, a practice that has no precedent in Jodo Shinshu, in the history of Jodo Shinshu, but it goes back pretty much to the origins of Buddhism in Japan. Hyakuman means 100 times 10,000, so 1,000,000, right? And Ben means repetition, so 1,000,000 repetitions of the Nembutsu. This is a practice that was never part of Jodo Shinshu, but it was part of the larger Pure Land tradition. It was preserved through Jodo Shu, but even now it's very rare that Jodo Shu would do the whole Hyakumanben. And there is one place in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, where they do it every year. And the minister there goes to Japan. He's a Nisei, and he says, like, I want to reintroduce this to Japan. So in South America, there are Japanese descendants reinventing, reimagining the Japanese past and wanting to bring it back to Japan. Now, how interesting is this? It's not top-down, clearly. It's flowing in more than one way. Another interesting example. In Brasilia, in the capital of Brazil, where I spent a month, there was a minister who was trying to reconstruct the Kangyo meditation, the Contemplation Sutra meditation. Right? It's one of our 3 sutras. But to my knowledge, no Buddhist tradition in Japan practices the Kangyo. Well, I've never encountered that, which we tried very hard to find in Tendai, in Shingon, Jodo Shu, nothing, right? It's never been part of Jodo Shinshu either. But it's a meditative practice, a contemplative practice that has a long history in the Pure Land tradition. It has a very special place, even in the doctrinal foundations of our school. Shandao, right? The Goshogyo, right? The 5 right practices. One of them is contemplation of the Pure Land, right? Shandao practiced this. Honen had the visions without deliberately trying to visualize. Shinran never talks about it, but it's one of the sutras we revere. So there was this minister in Brazil that read Shandao and tried to apply Shandao's ideas and reconstruct this practice in a way that would be easy for people in Brazil to do. And he was narrating it in Portuguese. It's very interesting stuff. He didn't go to Japan to try and revitalize it there. But, so, there's journeys in time, there's journeys in space, but there's also journeys in time. And this is what I would call ritual archaeology. So I just want to conclude with a couple of thoughts. So clearly, when we look at Jodo Shinshu ritual, from the perspective of the 21st century, looking back like 100 years, 150 years, it's clearly not static. It's not that ancient, and it's certainly multidirectional. It's transnational, it's dynamic, it's adaptive, it responds to different times, place, and circumstances. Now, the question for you is it resonating with the people right here, right now? Now, changing it is, but is it changing in ways that are helpful for you? There's constant innovation. There's changes traveling or flow in unexpected ways. And there's multiple centers of ritual culture. Now, I'll tell you another story. Maybe I'll go a bit over 7, sorry. But I think it's, yeah, I want to share with you this. So I was at a BCA meeting. Actually, you were there as well. Anyway, but and they were chanting the Shoshinge. And I wasn't ordained yet, but I had already memorized the Shoshinge, right? So I did the Shoshinge, like I chanted. And I had a Sansei lady, Japanese-American, 3rd generation, sitting next to me. And she was like, wow, you can chant this? I don't even know this. You know, like, I need the book. I don't know. Wow, you learned this. It's amazing. And you're not even Japanese. It's like, right. And then they sung a gatha, a hymn, a Buddhist hymn. And I was completely clueless because I have no exposure to that. And she knew it by heart. And then she looked at me and it's like, and now you need to learn this. Right? So there's multiple centers of ritual culture. It's not just Japan, the center. Right? There's a Japanese-American center. I heard many times, again, Sansei ladies saying like, this is our culture. This is how we do things at church. And it's called a church. Right? Anyway, so I think all of that is very interesting. Obviously, I am part of my own research because I'm a minister. I'm a ritual practitioner as well. So I'm both a minister and a researcher. And so here are some of my views or my takeaways from my double view, if you want. Ritual is always a relation. We need to remember that. It's a relation being performed, dramatized. Whether it's praising, it's expressing respect, it's creating a boundary, right? Is inspiring or is not, is performing a relation. That relation always speaks about power, about authority, but also resistance to those things. So it's a conversation. It's always both ways, like we're talking about. It also speaks about sensitivities, cultural, personal, and otherwise, like you've said, right? So it's something very personal in a way, right? Something that matters to people, that triggers people, that elicits strong emotions, and that responds to certain ways or interacts with the certain ways that we feel about what's appropriate, what's authentic, what's true, what's desirable, and so on. But I think also ritual is an opportunity, like I said to you, to switch off the conscious mind and experience the essence of the teaching in a more intuitive, existential way. Now, people from the Gonshiki side speak in this way, not in these terms, right? This is my way of using the English language. But they talk about embodying the teaching, feeling the teaching, rather than just here, right? So there's something about that. I take a jazz-like approach, and Derek has suffered me for the last week with my jazz-like approach to a lot of things. I'm constantly improvising and constantly changing things. Now, but in jazz, like in classical Indian music, for example, you do not, improvising doesn't mean whatever. I just get here and I just say whatever comes to my mind. No. I've done a lot of preparation, but it's combining elements. So my approach as a ritual practitioner, I do not do anything that I haven't been taught. Okay? So I always do the things that were taught to me in my training. Now, I combine them in a jazz-like way. in a way that is what I've seen in temples in Japan many times. Oh, so we're going to do the Shoshinge Saho. Okay, but instead of doing Sambujo at the beginning, we're going to do the Gasan, or we're going to do another bit of Shomyo from here. So this is very fluid. Right? Sometimes when it's performed at Otani Hombyo, you do this Shomyo. When it's performed at Honganji, you do this other Hombyo, the same ritual, right? So there's always an element of combining. Sometimes simplifying, sometimes making it more extensive. So that's how I play ritual, if you want. However, I believe we should have huge openness and diversity. And all of your sensitivities should be acknowledged and integrated somehow. So I love Shomyo. Shomyo really moves me. Right? Shomyo really resonates with me. But I understand that it doesn't do that for everybody. And true, you have to be trained to do it. It's a barrier in many ways. Yeah, so that's what I like to perform, but I don't want to impose that on people. Some of my members say, I would like to chant the Sambutsuge in English. I say, okay, I'll do it with you in English, no problem. No problem. Now, if I do it on my own, I do it in Chinese. Fine. If I can find a melodic version, there's a Shomyo version of the Sambutsuge, even better. It's great. But I understand that might not work for everybody. So I think we need to have some tolerance, some openness, but also acknowledge what resonates with each of us. Well, as a researcher, I do not have an opinion, of course, I just observe. But as a minister, of course, I do have an opinion and I have to make decisions, right? And anyway, I can talk more about this. And well, I wanted to ask you more thoughts, but we don't have a lot of time. So I would like to finish on this just before we go into the break. So what we're going to do now is to have a break, then have a service, and then I'll do a final Dharma reflection. But I just wanted to acknowledge we spent 5 days together and to thank you for your patience, for bearing with me for 5 days. I'm very pleased that I got to meet you. And I really appreciate your interest, the way you have engaged with me, with your questions, with your comments, and I hope we'll meet again. I'm flying away tomorrow, but I hope to be back. And in light, this is why I keep on changing the presentation every day, because depending on the conversations we had the night before, I want to acknowledge things, right? So from some of the conversations I've had in the last 2 weeks that I spent in Hawaii, this is what I would say. I would say, give yourselves permission to question and to make sense of the teaching in ways that resonate with you. The teaching needs to make sense to you and to you alone. Of course, check with teachers, check with texts. Right? It's not just whatever you feel. But when you receive the teaching, when you hear it, you need to try and make sense of it in your own way. Maybe it's through science. Maybe it is through science fiction. Maybe it is through generosity. Maybe it is through relationships in your family, otherwise. Maybe it is through other religions, other teachings you have received. Fine. But you need to make sense of it in your own terms. And if your question is, how do we attract people? How do we connect with younger people? First, make sense of it for yourself. Right? And the main point, I'll finish on this, is to awaken to the boundless wisdom and compassion that comes to me as Namandavats, as we were talking yesterday and the day before. It comes to all of us, but only I can appreciate it in a way that is unique to me, that makes sense to me. And I think it needs to be aligned with the tradition. That's why we need good teachers to consult, people who are trained, people who trust. We need to study those who are that way inclined, but it needs to be a unique appreciation. And my final advice, if I may, is don't seek finality. Keep going. It's a lifelong process. I want the answer. I want a definitive answer. Right, and then I stop there. No. It's meant to be a living thing that goes on until we are born in the Pure Land. Thank you so much. Namanda.
Thank you, Professor Enrique. That was terrific. Now, remember, we will have a final pauhana at the very end of the evening. So if you have questions, you can save them perhaps till then. But now we will kind of transition to our closing service, and then to a kind of a Dharma talk kind of period. So 10-minute break while we set up, and I'll give you a reminder. It's another good time to check out our bookstore and
Oh, yes.
get a souvenir, to take home.
Two of the books I quoted yesterday and that you seem to have enjoyed and mentioned today and everything, they are there. So feel free to have a look. Thank you.
For this service, we'll be chanting the Jusege in English. Please do your very best so that Reverend Enrique can hear it beautifully for the very first time. And then we'll close with the Nembutsu. So just those two elements.
Namandab, 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 namandab. I have made unrivaled vows and will reach the highest path. If I fail in any way, may I not attain Buddhahood. Should I not provide to all for countless kalpas to come, aid in times of suffering, may I not attain Buddhahood. I will reach enlightenment, but unless my Buddha name resounds throughout the universe, may I not attain Buddhahood. I will practice the noble path, wisely, mindfully, free of greed, seek to reach the supreme way, be a guide to one and all. May my power shine great light to illumine and dispel the darkness of the three poisons and save all from suffering. With eyes of wisdom I'll remove the darkness of ignorance. I will close all evil paths, open gates of highest good. When I attain Buddhahood, light will shine throughout all lands, light brighter than sun and moon, outshining all heaven. roar of a great lion, bowing before all Buddhas, steadfastly gaining virtues, with wisdom fulfilling my vows, I shall be a guide to all, like the wisdom of my teacher. May my wisdom also shine all throughout the universe and illumine one and all. If I shall fulfill these vows, may all lands tremble with joy. From the heavens wondrous flowers rain down upon all the land. Namandab, 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 namandab. Namandab, 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 namandab. Please rise to sing the Nembutsu together. Namo Amida. Namo Amida. Namanda. dance, Nama dance, Nama dance, Nama dance, Nama dance, Nama.
Well, thank you, everyone. And now we will have Reverend Enrique put on his other hat and provide us with the closing Dharma reflection.
Thank you very much. Is this working now? Yeah? That's good? Yeah. Thank you. So I'm going to go against what I've just said. That's the nature of human beings. We are ever-changing, like ritual. So I really enjoy the Juseiga in English. Actually, after this trip to Hawaii, I feel this has been taught to me. So I will incorporate it in my repertoire, because it's a tradition, a training that I have received while I've been here, and it will be a good way of reconnect, and it will resonate with some people in England as well. And perhaps one day we should have one in Spanish as well. So I have a translation, but not chantable somehow. So thank you very much. So I just wanted to save some time at the end. So I wanted to talk about ritual first, a more academic way, as I did. And I'm very curious to carry on. I mean, it's a subject that I care a lot about, and that is very close to my heart, and that I'm very interested in from a number of perspectives. So I'm very happy to continue the conversation afterwards. But for now, I wanted to offer a kind of a final reflection, kind of summing up everything that I've tried to convey in this last few days. So you have a takeaway. And also, because I know I ramble a lot, I try to put it in to one piece of paper that you can take home. And also contains my email, and it contains the 2 websites of the 2 organizations I'm involved in the UK and globally in the Spanish-speaking world. But before that, I just wanted to express my gratitude at the end of this journey, before I launch into Dharma reflection, to a number of people. I mean, to all of you, of course, for having come here and for having shared this journey with me. I said yesterday that this time in Hawaii feels kind of like Tokuro and Kyoshi. Equally grueling, but equally meaningful. And it's not an exaggeration. I think meeting a lot of you has been really enriching for me from a Dharma point of view, so I appreciate that very much. But in particularly, I want to mention 6 individuals. Let's see if I if I can remember. I mean, they're in front of me, so it should be okay. But if I remember the order I thought about. And first, I really want to acknowledge Caroline. I mean, on the second day, we talked about Sujata, right? And how Sujata offers this bowl of rice to the Buddha, and how she is the teacher of the Buddha in many ways, and how she's a very important factor in the Buddha becoming awakened. And Caroline has kept us going for the last week. And so I really thank you for feeding us, for looking after us, and for being our teacher in that sense. And also I want to acknowledge David, who, like most bodhisattvas, they are behind the scenes. You don't see him, but he's essential to all of this running smoothly. And he's taking care of the recording, and I've had a chance to spend some time with you in the last couple of days. Particularly, I've enjoyed our interactions, but thank you so much for the work you're doing to make this available beyond this room and beyond the people who are in Honolulu tonight. And to some people that I know, some people that I know are thankful to you because they could join some of these sessions. So thank you for your hard work and for your excellent work as well. And then I want to acknowledge Derek, because you've been absolutely instrumental to keep this happening. I'll just sum it up, like the kind of bodhisattva activity of Derek towards me is best summed up in one sentence that I said 2 days ago. When I panic, I just turn to Derek. You know, like, I know he's reliable, I know he's there, I know I can count on you. And you've been so helpful in so many ways. So thank you so much. And then a big part of me coming to Hawaii was about kind of going full circle to how I encountered the Dharma in the first place. And as you've heard, if you've been around, I heard the Dharma for the first time, the Jodo Shinshu Dharma in particular, through Al Bloom. And it was thanks to Al Bloom that I'm here now. Now, unfortunately, the causes and conditions were not there for me to meet Al Bloom while he was still alive. And so when I got the invitation to come to Hawaii, I felt like, oh, finally, this is the time to come back to Hawaii, to meet Al Bloom somehow, right? And so there appeared Dexter Ma, who has been the person through whom I've met Al Bloom in many ways. He has taken me to meet the Bloom family. We went to Al's favorite restaurant. You took me to the Ohaka, to the place where his ashes are. And I feel that you are a Dharma friend. You are a Dharma brother. And I'm so happy you're becoming ordained. And you have been such an important part of this journey. So thank you so much for this connection. Namanda, namanda, namanda. And then I'm thinking, of course, of Reverend Higa, that is like, it's an old friend that I've met again. And you've been extremely kind, looking after me, taking me places, and hosting me as well. A very relaxing, very enjoyable time in Kona, surrounded by frogs, my favorite animal, and with wonderful coffee. And I feel like I want to acknowledge you for everything you've done. I mean, as the director of BSC, also for the invitation, of course. But I've learned a lot through our interaction in this journey. And I think I look up to you as a minister. I think I know many ministers. And I know many good ministers, but there's very few that have this, who are into it in the way that you are. And you are, for me, the model minister. Because first and foremost, it's not about the ritual, though you're a good ritual practitioner. It's not about the doctrine, though you are very well versed and everything. It's how much you care and your service to your members. You are an inspiration to me. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And thank you very much for this connection. Yeah. And finally, of course, I want to thank Bishop Umitani for the very kind invitation to come here, which has been, as I've just expressed, extremely meaningful to me. And when I first received the invitation from Umitani Socho, I was like, first, I'm very junior. I feel I'm very junior. And then I look at the people who had spoken before, and I was like, oh dear, okay. They are all people I respect very much. I look up to people who have been my teachers, people who I regard as teachers. So I wanted to thank you, Bishop, for your trust in me. I hope I have done a good job. I hope I haven't betrayed your trust. And thank you for trusting me when I'm so new to everything, and for being here. And it's been wonderful to be here, thanks to you. Okay, so I wanted to finish with a kind of summary, and then maybe hopefully we can have at least a little bit of conversation, again, which is what I enjoy most. And I'm mindful that today I just wanted to give you some of my academic knowledge, because I thought that was important as well. So this is kind of a summary of, I think, everything that I've tried to convey in the last few days. And this is, again, back to our usual, let's finish like we've done the whole week. And I would like to think this is not an ending. Nothing is final, as I said before. This is a continuation. So the talk, the seminar ended at 7 when I finished my talk. And now the service, and this is a kind of, we're moving into the future, and then let's just let it flow until we meet again. So this wasan from the Koso Wasan, number 82, from the section on Shandao, to me really encapsulates the essence of the Jodo Shinshu path, the essence of Buddhism in a way, the essence of the three jewels, in my current understanding. I'm sure my understanding will shift. So again, I like to read it in Japanese so you appreciate how it sounds, whether you understand it or not. And then I will offer you my translation, and well, you also have CWS translations. They don't differ significantly, I believe. But I like to translate myself to make sense of it. Shinjin wa gan yori shozureba nenbutsu jobutsu jinen nari. Jinen wa sunawachi hodo nari. Shodai nehan utagawazu. Since Shinjin is born from the vow, becoming Buddha through the Nembutsu is natural. Naturalness is nothing but the land of fulfillment. Realizing great nirvana is beyond doubt. Namanda. And so, what do I see in this wasan? I see the 5 vows that Shinran considers the most important, and they map onto different chapters of Kyogyo Shinsho. They are like the backbone of Shinshu doctrine, if you want. And these are not necessarily, in this order is fine. I mean, they are enumerated in various orders at various points. The 18th vow, the 17th vow, the 11th vow, the 12th, and the 13th vow. So if you had to remember only 5, please remember these 5. These are the most important ones. And in this wasan, I see the 18th, the 17th, and the 11th. And I see these mapping onto Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, which are things that are always interconnected. They are meant to be interconnected, right? So the Buddha, in this context, is Shinjin. Shinjin is not my faith. Shinjin is not what I believe. People often ask me, oh, so you're a Buddhist. What do you believe in? You know what I say? I say, I believe that whatever I believe in is irrelevant. Because the core of our tradition is this Shinjin, but it's not a personal belief or conviction. It is the mind of the Buddha. It is the heart of the Buddha. This is a very important point, right? And here is the Shinjin that emerges as the kind of natural working of the vow, the natural unfolding of this relationship that is the primal vow. We've been talking a lot about relationship. Now, the 17th vow is the practice. There is a practice in Jodo Shinshu. It's the practice of hearing the name, right? And so the 17th vow talks about the Namanda Butsu being uttered by the Buddhas of the 10 directions. Like we were saying yesterday, can you hear the Dharma being taught by the mountain or the river or the tree? Right? So perhaps that's where the Buddhas of the 10 directions are. And if our ears are open, if our hearts are open, we hear them as Namandavats, Namandavats. I don't mean that literally, but I mean the message of the Namandavats, the deep meaning of that relationship that is the Namandavats, is perhaps something we can hear from the 10 directions, from everyone and everything. And so when we come to hear that relationship, that name, that expresses that deep connection we have with awakening, we cannot unsee what we have already seen. And so we enter into what we call non-retrogression. We are bound for liberation no matter what. Because at the same time, we come to understand that we are in this unbreakable relationship with awakening, we come to see how far we are from awakening, how deeply enmeshed we are in our self-centeredness. And that's why awakening always surrounds us. Not in spite of, but precisely because. And so this is the 11th vow. And I see this mapping onto Sangha. Right? And I'll explain why. And then you have the 12th and the 13th vow. The 12th vow is the vow of immeasurable light. Amida means immeasurable light. Amitabha. The 13th vow is the vow of immeasurable life. Amitayus. Amida means immeasurable life. Now, this map onto wisdom and compassion. So the sharp wisdom that we call Amida is available through the whole of space, is available everywhere, because light, as a metaphor, illumines everywhere, right? So the sharp wisdom that we call Amida, that reveals the darkness of our bonno, is available everywhere. Now, the deep compassion that we call Amida is available at all times and throughout all lives. And this is the warmth So there's a clarity that enables us to see our darkness very sharply, but at the same time, there is a warmth that doesn't judge it, doesn't demand anything, and accepts it just as it is. They are like two wings of a bird. They're very important, this double aspect.
She said that.
Yep. Everything okay? Yep. All right. Traumatic moment. So, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and the three vows. So, the Buddha is the person who became awakened, right? But the Buddha is also the awakened heart, the awakened mind. And therefore, is the Shinjin. Is the triple Shinjin of the 18th vow. So when we talk about Shinjin, it has three aspects. Sincere mind, Shishin, clarity, sharpness, seeing things as they truly are. Shingyo, like entrusting, joyful, letting go. Yokusho, aspiration for birth, aspiration for awakening, and therefore aspiration to embrace and liberate all beings. So these three aspects are what make the Buddha mind, the Buddha heart. And this is not something I can attain, but this is something that I can encounter and be in relationship with. And this is something that emerges in me. And it doesn't become me, but it sheds light on me, on my darkness. And so my darkness becomes the proof that this mind of Buddha is already present, is already there. And so the Dharma is the path, is the process by which we become awakened. So this is the process of hearing the Namo Amida Butsu, right? Which expresses we are already in relation to awakening. And when we really hear this Namo Amida Butsu, we appreciate this relationship. That's what we call Shinjin. It's a kind of awakening. And so naturally, spontaneously, once we recognize that, the path continues, the path flows, and just naturally takes us to awakening, which is what we call the Pure Land. And so the Sangha is one of the most misinterpreted terms in Buddhism, especially in modern days, because we call ourselves Sangha, and that's fine. I'm not against that. And in a sense, in the same way that we participate of what Buddha is, and we participate into what Dharma is, we also participate into what Sangha is. But just a group of us is not Sangha. Sangha is something much more deep, much more important. Sangha is the tradition of teachers who have put the teaching into practice. More broadly, Sangha in Sanskrit has the same root as to sum, to put together. So Sangha means a coming together of people, but Sangha also means the coming together of the teaching, the coming together of the teaching in myself, right? So in some sutras, they talk about Sangha as the Buddha and the Dharma coming together. So Sangha is something very important, very profound. And in a sense, us as a group, we kind of participate in that, relate to that, but we are not, as such, Sangha. This is important because people say, oh, I can take refuge in the Buddha, I can take refuge in the Dharma, but Sangha, I don't know. Because they're thinking it's just this, right? Anyway, so what is the coming together of the Dharma within each of us? Is realizing this relationship and realizing that that relationship is unbreakable. Yeah, and sometimes Shinran uses the term Kongo Shin. Kongo Shin means diamond-like mind. So diamond is unbreakable. The diamond cuts other things, but it cannot be cut itself, right? That's the idea. And so we also use this expression shojoju, right? So this assembly of the rightly established, rightly settled. So the Sangha is non-retrogression. It's the deep sense that we are on track for awakening, on track for the Pure Land, because we have recognized that relationship, and we know that that relationship includes us, and that it couldn't function without us, that we are key to it, and therefore we are bound for liberation. So, how does it work in our lives? Or in this Vasan in particular, you can see how the Buddha is the first line, the Dharma is the second, two lines, second and third, and the Sangha is the third one, right? So I think I've explained that more or less clearly. I think there is a risk of thinking of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as things that are completely external to you. I'm not saying they are me, or they are purely internal. They are both external and internal, right? But if we think of them just as an object of worship, object of faith, distant, removed from my experience, then there's something that is not really working there, because it needs to resonate in me somehow. So we can think of Amida as this being in a distant, far, far away land, a godlike figure, the primal vow as ancient history, the Pure Land as completely removed from our lives, just beyond death. And I'm not saying it happens in this life, but it is touching this life in some way. And so in this Wasan, to me, it's very clear that Amida Buddha, the Namo Amida Butsu, and the Pure Land of non-retrogression are constantly manifesting in our experience. Because they are the joy of the Dharma, the joy of hearing the Namo Amida Butsu. They are the presence, the dynamic, the working of the Namo Amida Butsu in our lives, and the certainty, the assurance, the comfort, you said some of you, that they bring to me. All these things are the three jewels at work within myself. So instead of something that we merely worship from afar, or we think they are removed from us, let's also appreciate how they are working within us. I'm not saying they're not outside, they're also outside, but they are also working within me. And finally, I find this point very interesting. The fulfilled land is in itself the spontaneous working, right? So the Pure Land, the fulfilled land, is these two words for the same thing, is something that elicits a lot of questions, a lot of speculations, a lot of confusion. You see, most of the questions I'm getting in every seminar is like, oh, what are you saying about the Pure Land? So can you be born in this life? Oh, is this, like it's what everybody is talking about in a way. And this has been going on in a way for 800 years. But now I really like how Shinran Shonin deals with this, and he cuts through it. What is this Jodo? What is this land of fulfillment? What is this Pure Land? It's the Jinen. It's the spontaneous working. The spontaneous working of the vow, spontaneous working of the relationship that binds me and awakening. And so, it's not necessarily a place, but we imagine it as a place. It's not necessarily a time, but we need to imagine it in a time. And it's not necessarily, it's not this. It needs to be somehow other, but it's also somehow present. If it's completely absent, it's not doing anything, right? And so, this Jinen, this naturalness, is the relationship that we have with the three treasures, the relationship that we have with awakening. And when we find ourselves in relation to awakening, like I described the other night, it's like falling in love. It's like falling. It's not something you can establish, this relationship. It's something that happens to you. It's like, oh, I find myself saying the Nembutsu, like I described on the first day. I find myself inspired by these teachings. I don't know how, I didn't do anything, but you are already on that boat, and the boat has already sailed, right? And so when we are in that process, very naturally, very spontaneously, we're being carried towards awakening, towards the Pure Land. We are moving ever closer to sincerity, to kindness, to acceptance, and to joy. And the closer we move to these good qualities, the more we realize that I'm not sincere, and that I'm not kind, that I have no acceptance, and that I have no joy. And it is precisely because I'm being carried closer to these qualities that I realize in myself how much they are lacking. And so, when we are in the embrace of the three treasures, when we are in the embrace of this natural flow of the Namo Amida Butsu, what we call the Namo Amida Butsu, there is no need to wait until death. There is no need to wait at all. The question, oh, can I be born in the Pure Land now, becomes irrelevant. You are already in relation to awakening. You are already embraced by the three treasures. And you are still experiencing karmic conditionality and bono and everything. There's no need to worry about anything. There's no need to wait for anything. You just live. When you die, you die. Right? So I just wanted to finish with this reflection, and now I want to hear from you and hopefully have a few minutes of exchange and conversation. You have my email there, and you have the websites linked to my communities. Thank you. Amanda. Thank you. Okay. Just I'll say one thing on the Pure Land, and I think a lot of the confusions emerge from two things. One is, the fact that we talk about the Pure Land as a place. And that's okay, we need images, we need metaphors to talk about things. And we use place metaphors a lot. I'm in a good place. He's in a bad place. I'm in a bad place means I'm suffering, right? I'm in a good place, I'm happy in my life, right? But also, Shinran Shonin redefines what the Pure Land means in many ways. And Shinran Shonin equates being born in the Pure Land with becoming fully awakened Buddha. So when we ask in the question, can I be born in the Pure Land in this life, you asking, can I become a fully awakened Buddha? And hence lies the problem, the difficulty of it, the impossibility of it, right? So why can I not go to that place in this life? Well, that's not the point. The point is going to that place means becoming a fully awakened Buddha. And insofar as you have this body and you live in this world, as we were saying yesterday, the world is sick, and so we are sick. You can't be fully awakened. Because what did we say the first day? If I'm not free, you can't be free. Right? If you're not free, if you're not happy, I cannot be happy. So I cannot become fully awakened Buddha. This cannot be the Pure Land insofar as there are people suffering. And this world is the way it is. And yet, what we can experience in this life is this deep sense of connection to the three treasures, to awakening. And how do we experience all of that? Through the Namo Amida Butsu. If we really hear that Namo Amida Butsu, really appreciate it, really delve into its deep meaning, its significance for me, and the fact that it is for me and for me alone, we are as close as we can get to that awakening. And when we die, as we die, something drops away, and that's it. So that's how I think about it, that's how I explain it.
Might the confusion about the Pure Land come because many other paths of Pure Land Buddhism focus more on kind of an afterlife place, and our Shin tradition is so different from that. You know, we get turned around many times when we, get other people's input, and their perspectives. Yeah,
I think so, and I think there's a very traditional idea of the Pure Land, where a place where you go, you reach non-retrogression once you are born in the Pure Land, and then there is a place, much more thought of like a place where you train. You train for a long time. So it's like going to the Pure Land is like going to a monastery, if you want, right? You train for a long time, so then you become a Buddha. Now what Shinran Shonin says is like, you're born in the Pure Land, you reach non-retrogression in this life, so you're already on track. This is a crucial point. He brings it forward. And then, as you die, you become awakened and you come back. There's no dwelling in the Pure Land. You come back to help all beings, to liberate all beings. So the ultimate goal is compassion. But yeah, I think that's different from a lot of other ways of talking about Pure Land, and maybe that's one of the reasons. It's such a beautiful, rich image. And I say to you what I said at some point, don't try and focus of, I always use this metaphor I heard from a Tai Chi teacher. Like you can use Tai Chi to like build muscle? Or it's like, yeah, you can. It's like using a mobile phone, a cell phone, to hammer a nail. You can. You try. Like you can probably hammer it. So I think that when we are approaching the Pure Land, thinking about, is this a real place? How does it work? Is it like, where is it? Like all these things that are described, are they literal? We are trying to hammer a nail with a cell phone. I go back to what Kuwahara Sensei said to us a few years ago. When you read the sutras, when you hear the teaching of the sutras, focus on how you feel. How does it make you feel when you read these descriptions of this beautiful place? Nobody's asking you to believe it. They're just asking you to open your heart and taste it, experience it. And then there might be a message in that is very meaningful. But if you're asking, oh yeah, but this happened? Is this real? Where is it? It's like, yeah, that's not the point somehow. Story doesn't need to be literal or factual in order to move you, in order to teach you something. And I'm not saying it's not literal. I don't know. All I'm saying, that's not the point.
Do you think that's true for the other distinctions that we have, like nirvana, samsara, this shore, the other shore, that by thinking of it as two different places or things, we get confused with that process?
I think
the same way?
Yeah. I think so, 100%. I think Buddhism is always working in the realm of subjective experience. Buddhism is skillful means. We think in terms of place. So we use images of place. We think in terms of spatial, right? Or in terms of time. So we talk about that way. But Buddhism is trying to... All I'm saying is this. The Pure Land is not what you imagine. The Pure Land is not what I imagine. I believe there's a Pure Land. But I believe I have no idea what that's like, and it will never be what I imagine it to be. So, what is the teaching doing by providing these beautiful images? It's trying to inspire me, give me a flavor, give me a sense. And when you say, oh, you'll meet your grandmother in the Pure Land, you'll meet your ancestors in the Pure Land. There's something very deep in that. This is a place where all beings meet, where all beings will be, or are, in a sense, at the same time. Something very, very deep in that. Doesn't mean I go to a place where I go like, oh, Granny, it's been such a long time.
I don't know whether I should ask this or not, but I said, okay, I'm going to.
You're already doing it, so too late.
I'm going to bring up the guy again. If you were to go to the White House and you were
Not
to meet
again.
him, yeah, I'm sorry, but you just,
I'm not being
something
invited, I don't think so.
Well, if for whatever reason,
Okay.
or if he came out of that door, what would you say to him?
Hi.
And you would wait for him to say something to you before you could respond, which is your way of teaching.
Yeah, so what is he saying? In this fantasy, what is he saying to me? In your fantasy, what is he saying to me?
What would he? I don't know. What would he? Anybody? If you had, what would a guy? Yeah.
Why are you wasting your time?
Saying that to me, or you saying he would say that to Rev? Okay. Why are you wasting your time?
Am I though?
Huh?
Am I though?
What did he say?
Yeah, yeah. So I would reply, am I though?
Or am I though? Okay.
Yeah. I'll ask about his health. Be polite. I don't know. I'm not going to change the world. Sometimes the best way to reply to a question is with another question. Yeah.
One last chance. Anything in chat? No.
No.
Oh, Dave.
Nothing is ever what we imagine anyway. Just it's not about the Pure Land alone. It's like anything in life. I mean, again, those of you who are married, I ask, yes, how many of you are married and so on? Like, did you imagine marriage would be like this? I didn't imagine my 40th year to be like this at all. Things are never what you expect. Things are never what you imagine. That's part of the whole process. Yeah, sorry.
Enrique, you were asking what descriptions of the Pure Land, how they make us feel. That's kind of part of the point. I guess for me, I feel like I can listen to those, and they don't do much for me, frankly. I think partly because I've experienced such beauty in this world. I have plenty of places that I can think of in this world. I suppose some of the descriptions are using examples of kind of an intensified version of
Very
beauty
much
in this
so.
world.
Very much so.
But I just don't feel the need for that because of what I have experienced.
That's fine. I mean, in a way, the three treasures, the Shinjin, the Buddha mind, the mind that sees clearly, the mind of wisdom, the mind of compassion, illumining you, illumining yourself. The name, the Namo Amida Butsu, expressing that relationship as a way of connecting to that realization. And the sense of certainty that you are in relation to awakening, and therefore awakening is going to happen for you. It's unavoidable, as it will happen for all beings. That's all, as I see it. That's all we need. Pure Land helps, bring in the Pure Land. Pure Land doesn't help, don't think about that. I mean, Shinran Shonin says, I don't know if the Nembutsu, or is reported to have said, I don't know if the Nembutsu is the cause for being born in the Pure Land or the cause of going to hell. It says that in Tanisho, or is reported to have said that.
Okay, I guess we will bring this to a close. Thank you very
On that
much,
note.
everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you again to, as Enrique said, to all the people who made this possible. It's, you can think of it as almost like a gift from, the Buddhist Study Center and the Mission of Hawaii to keep this going for so many years. We kind of roll the dice every year, hoping that people will come. And so thank you, so much for attending and making this a kind of a vibrant occasion. Thanks again to Derek and Dave and Caroline and Reverend Blaine and Reverend Umitani and Yoshiko, for all the work that went into this. But especially thank you to Enrique, for coming halfway around the world, to visit Hawaii and get to know us and include us in your next book. Or maybe the whole book will be about us.
Yeah. Give me another 10 years, maybe.
Okay. Just a reminder that there will be about a 30-minute pauhana. It is, Aloha Friday, after all. And we have plenty of goodies to, try to make our way through. Also, tomorrow, August 9th, marks the 80th anniversary of the Nagasaki atomic bombing. Hawaii Betsuin is co-sponsoring its Four Petals Peace Partners 16th annual Peace Walk at 5 p.m. So there's some flyers there on the registration desk. So please join us if you'd like to express your appreciation for 80 years of continued restraint in using atomic weapons. Okay, so thanks again. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namamda, Namamda.
And we'll see you all next year.
Namamda.